Hey, everybody. Welcome to the recap of episode one, our second attempt at this. Unfortunately, we ran into some technical issues with our attempt at a recap on Thursday night, largely alcohol related. But I understand after having passed out about half an hour into that recap that it kind of just got more sloppy ever since, I kind of dropped away. So we're going to try and do this again. We did hold interventions, I think, for most of us. So I am off the sauce. We are doing this middle of the day. I think Pips might still be drinking, but for the rest of us, we're going to try and get through this nice and clean and sober. So for this recap, before we kind of outline what we're going to try and accomplish with it, Alex, I think you had a couple shout outs that you wanted to make to individuals who've been contributing.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you to everybody that has watched and reviewed on the YouTube channel. Lord Captain Commander Don especially was nice to hear from him. He's got a lot of good content on his channel, so check him out. And then the usual guys that we like to thank, Disparu, the Questioners YouTube channel, a bunch of good guys making Wheel of Time content, and especially Prophet of the Dragon, who was on our episode 2 recap. So thank you to everybody for helping and contributing.
Excellent. So we are doing this in a private channel right now. Maybe we'll go back to the Discord for later episodes, although it did get incredibly sloppy the last time around. We have our Lord Captain Commander Sneed back as guest reviewer for this recap. And the idea here, it's not to try and exclude other people from the community, but when we bring on a special guest, we definitely want to give them the attention that they deserve. So we're going to keep it just to the four of us for this element of the recap here. And the idea is first off, we're going to go through the entire episode, um, kind of 30 seconds to a minute at a time, screenshots. And the objective is going to be to try and touch on things that we might have missed in the previous 4 hours. I don't know if there's a whole lot. I have a couple of things written down that I wanted to point out to. Maybe bring some more of the discussion back to how it could have been done if it was true to the books. And then after we complete that kind of watch through, Pips, I know you have some panel questions related to themes and characterization and other things that we want to mention specifically about this opening episode. And hopefully we get through it without anybody passing out. So with that, I say, well, Pips, if you want to do a quick intro, and then Sneed, if you want to do an intro as well.
I will only say that my intervention failed, so I am not off the wagon, and am still drinking some Kentucky straight bourbon today. And I'll pass it over to Lord Captain Commander. See how he's doing after his intervention.
Yeah, I'm doing okay. Definitely needed the intervention there. Uh, so I basically just all I have to say is I've got the book open here, and because I'm gonna be referencing a few parts of it, and
Nice.
it's shocking how much better the book is than anything that we got in the show. Like even the most mundane things in the book are miles, not even comparable.
Yeah.
I I'm beginning to regret how successful my intervention was because we haven't even started yet, and I'm kind of craving another drink. But
You
Alex,
feeling the itch?
I and I have Rona, so fuck. The hangover's gone, and I got something worse now. So our first screen of the day. This is the Terangrial or Saangrial, the 100 times X. I think we beat this to death.
Is
I
this
don't.
actually the same one that we see in episode 8, or rather, you guys saw? I haven't
Yes,
seen that episode yet. Okay.
yes.
Yes, it
Is-
100% is, and you know it because the two things that it shows her holding are the sangreal and the knife, both of which they had to add here because she didn't use either of them in the at all right up until that very moment in
So
episode 8.
here's So here's the question that I have. Do you guys think that this is going to take the place of the little fat man Angrial?
I think it's going to take the
Or
place of Kalendor, for
and that
fuck's
was my
sake.
other question. So
Oh,
is it going to take the place of one of the iconic Angrials or Saw Angrials from the
it
book?
could. Now, when I noticed this was the stupid single-use item, and I think Sneed mentioned that in his review too of episode 8. But I went and looked like what happened to the device after it was used, or the song reel, and I think it vanishes. So we'll see that in episode 8, and we'll keep an eye open for it. But I think
Okay.
it is a single use item that basically you use it once and then it evaporates. So it's
Which makes sense because the people associated with the show clearly like played Dungeons and Dragons, read Twilight, but actually
oh
never even saw the book covers of Wheel of Time.
man, can we get off of this? Like 30 seconds ahead. This is already beginning to piss me off.
This is
Oh
the nameless, unknown sort of setting with the weird sort of like Pueblo Indian style, like built into the face of the rocks. But I guess this is supposed to be somewhere in Randland that we've.
yeah, the Aiel Waste, because that's where you actually have that kind of
Honestly,
stuff.
it looks that was what I was gonna bring up as well. That like it's got a bunch of trees, but looks kind of like the Iowa Waste, and it has the random Dothraki. Like it's just, it's yeah, setting
One other
really.
thing that I wanted to mention about that prologue, though, or at least Moraine leaving the tower, are we supposed to get the sense that she is just then setting out for the first time on her quest? Because if she's been at it for 20 years already, why the heck is she at the like White Tower looking at a map of the world again and getting all of her items assembled? So I thought that was kind of weird, right? Because
I mean, the only way to have her not be as dumb as you've pointed out that her whole arc is in this show is to suggest that it's brand new. She hasn't really figured anything out yet. She's new at this. Give her a pass.
so she heard a prophecy 20 years previous, and now she's finally getting around to doing something about it.
Also,
I don't know if that's better.
I mean, I'm not going to support you in your quest. I'm already going on glass 2 here.
Yeah, I'm trying to
All right.
think. If I was being extraordinarily charitable, I might say, she has to report in every year to Sawan, but that's the best argument I could come up with. But even that has all the problems of that implies that she's been doing this for 20 years and has made zero progress in all
I
20 of
mentioned,
those
couldn't
years.
Yeah.
couldn't she
Yeah.
report in to Swan with her, sort of sexcapade Terangrial
Well, that's how she reports in.
Yeah.
Fucking scissoring.
Oh
Yeah.
God.
on your
Uh,
knees?
Yeah.
oh my God. No, we're not there yet.
Yeah, we gotta save
Yeah,
that
I'm
for.
I'm the only one drinking, so I get to laugh at your pain.
Oh God. All right.
Keep
Let's skip ahead here because the Dothraki.
The Dothraki, yes.
Oh, okay. So one thing I did want to point out is when you do see this lead Dothraki, um, okay, one thing that would have been cool or a little subtle hint would be if they edited out this guy's shadow, right? Because that would have been like a subtle hint kind of before Leandrin shows up that the guy isn't actually real. So if he doesn't have a shadow, maybe that could be
The
cool.
CGI budget, though, Dane, you just don't
True enough.
understand. COVID.
But the other thing that this figment of this dude's imagination does is he actually disturbs the grass as opposed
In the
to him
ground. Look at
himself.
those
Yeah, yeah.
footsteps.
Oh fuck this show. Skip us ahead, Alex. I think we've beaten this idiotic stuff to death. Although I do also want to say when she decides to block the canyon with rocks, wouldn't it just be like a million times easier for her to wrap this guy up in weaves of air?
See, this is where the problem of
Yeah.
us doing these reviews drunkenly, because that's just a straight up conversation we've had before,
Oh,
and Dane doesn't remember.
okay.
100%. I think I've
Okay.
talked
Sorry.
about how terrible this outfit is, but God,
I
look at
did
that
have a
vest.
few
Let's give Sneed a point.
things to say about this scene. One, the way that they film this and the way they do this guy doesn't seem threatening at all. I don't know if you guys talked about that, but like
Yes.
if you're trying to show this as like even if you're trying to show this as, well, he's insane, it's filmed so flatly and he doesn't do anything.
He's
And they
not a
could have
So
scary
easily
kind of
killed
insane.
him.
Yeah,
Could have
Leandrin's
easily
just
killed him with
chasing
that rock
Crazy
slide.
Tom around. Crazy
yeah,
Tom who hangs out at the village. You never heard anybody. Who just talks to himself in the corner of the tavern on Friday. But Leandrin's chasing him.
yeah,
Because
and
he
then
makes it filthy.
also, that was what I was going to talk is like the Leandrin being like, you make it filthy. The way they have her say that is as if she's saying like, we AS today, we use this pure wonderful thing and you've made it filthy when you
Yeah.
use it, which is wrong. But then also, Leandrin does not use Satan. She uses
Yeah.
a completely different thing. she
I know.
wouldn't think about it as if like, oh, they're tainting this wonderful thing I use. She would think they use this completely different thing. That's
So
So
bad.
if
this
you
is why I
time
think
warp
that this.
ourselves back to when
Yeah.
the first couple episodes came out, this is where you saw all the cope from people talking about like, well, Robert Jordan used the trope of sort of the unreliable narrators, and so Moraine and the arrogance and Leandrin and you make it filthy. That's just 3,000 years of Aes Sedai sort of misinformation, and they just don't know. And it's like, no, that's what the writers are going with. That's where we are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I
I
guess
made
to
the
which
quip. I made the quip that essentially we have an ungendered magic system. There is a one power. It's not split between Saidin and Saidar. And probably what the show is going for is that the taint is toxic masculinity, because that's ultimately what makes sense. Because you see it over and over in later parts of the show, where like Balsamon or the Dark One is trying to teach Rand how to channel, but he's teaching him to use Saidar. And it doesn't seem like there's this bifurcation between a male half and a female half, because
Yeah.
that runs counter to the agenda of a lot of the people writing the show. So yeah, toxic masculinity on a shared power, that makes sense in the context of this scene, and
Well, I
it's
think
one of
we can
the
all
worst
agree
butcherings.
can all agree that that dude is getting impressed right now, and I say we press on.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about like the cope when it comes to this sort of thing. Like they're like, oh, it's an unreliable narrator. To which my response is going to be anybody who's watching the show who hasn't read the books, which is the justification for every single other change, has
Yes.
no idea that he uses an unreliable narrator. So they've just been hit with 99% wrong information. Just terrible.
Oh man, that really does look like it might be Aldib.
Well, you know the horse flesh.
Damn it, Dain, and your drunken ramblings. Now all I can think about is that they only cast 5 horses.
Yeah. Oh fuck. Was that me,
See, I
or
no.
was that
Yeah.
Trip's point of 5 horses? That probably is though.
Actually,
All
I'm
right.
looking at it. The three in the front are the same, or at least extremely similar enough that I can't tell.
That's the thing.
The
The shot that I'm looking at here, it's hard to tell how much like how white that horse is because Aldib is definitely like a sort of a white gray dapple, and
Yeah.
that one like look it looks like a white gray dapple.
it
Like
is
I could see it.
it is a
So
white
they
gray
pro-
dapple.
And let's just all be honest. The one in the background is 100% Bella. Look at the hooves.
with the
With
with
the
the
white
hair on it.
socks or with the leg
Yes.
warmers.
Yes, that horse back there is it's a pony. That's Bella.
Nice.
You're
All
right,
right.
it is a pony.
Well, we'll keep this in mind for when we see the horses leaving the Two
Fuck
Rivers
off,
dinner at the
show.
end. But oh, this is actually a better screen cap. We should have used this one instead of him screaming for the thumbnail.
He looks like he's just considering what's about to be done to all of the lore.
He looks how I'm looking.
God.
We can move ahead.
Uh,
Oh man.
oh man, it really is Aldib, isn't it? Son of a bitch.
So this is the same horse that we just saw one of the Red Aja rides. So they are recycling
Probably,
horses.
son of a bitch.
That's tough.
This
I like that Aldib and Mandarb are the same size, and that Lan and Moraine are the same size. Like
yeah.
he's supposed to be short, even for a Carrienan, and he's supposed to be like basically the same height as Rand. Uh, Classic.
So here, since we're probably going to skip ahead, so past the Taviran line, but I just wanted to bring
Ooh,
up,
foreshadowing for the cold open in episode 8.
yeah. But on the four Taviran thing, and whether or not someone's Taviran their whole life, it just dawned on me, and this is a book thing, that there are particular characters, Aes Sedai characters or channelers, that have the talent of being able to see Taviran. And the three that I know off the top of my head, there's Logain, there's Swan, and there's Nicola. And if Swan and Moraine were out hunting the Dragon Reborn, why did they send Moraine out into the world when Swan had the talent for being able to see a Tavir shine brightly?
So we did talk about this when you were hammered drunk in the last attempt at recapping this. And I think
Which
the
no one
consensus.
will ever see. So, whew,
Oh, we're gonna have some blooper reels.
oh, damn it.
I think the consensus was that Taviran are super rare, and that it's unlikely that Moraine and Swan, having basically lived in their sort of areas and then lived in the tower, she probably didn't know that Swan had that ability until, Swan's been Amerlin for 20 years or 10 years or whatever. Much more likely she would have run into people who are weakly Taviran by that point. So the idea that like they would have known that Swan had that talent, I think is potentially unlikely. And then also there's the idea that if you're a Taviran, it doesn't mean that you're always one.
Yeah.
So if you're a Taviran, later in life, it doesn't mean you are one as a child. And that got us into a conversation about whether or not the main characters actually were Taviran before the events of the book. I'm on the fence on that. I sort of lean towards I don't think they were. I think that Robert Jordan gives us the part of the story that is the significant event in history, essentially. So in my mind, Rand, Matt, and Perrin were not Taviran prior to the events maybe closely leading up to Winter Night. And then after the last battle, they probably were no longer Taviran as well.
Well, it
Um,
also seems a bit from the book that Moraine is a bit surprised that the three of them are Taviran, and in hindsight, maybe
yes.
she never should have been. Like she should have always gone out expecting that the Dragon Reborn would be a very, very powerful Taviran. So
I don't
that's
think
all
she's
where
I
I'm.
feel
surprised
like
that Rand is. I think
she
she's
was surprised that
surprised
Matt and Perrin
that
were,
Matt and
Yeah.
Perrin are.
and
Um,
and she was mostly surprised by how strongly Taviran they were.
and are
Yeah.
you asking like book reason why it's Moraine that goes out, not Swin?
Yeah, because and my
Okay,
whole
because that
reason for thinking this is the only way that rumors of Fort Taviran would manifest somewhere is a drunken swan in a bar, basically say, "Oh, I saw four of those glowing fuckers down in Emmons Field." Right? That's the only way it would start.
yeah, well, the rumor makes no sense. Book wise, in New Spring, Swan is basically picked to be the head of the eyes and ears of the Blue,
Yeah.
Ajah, and basically can't leave the tower. And then they're also like, well, it'll just be more useful having you in the tower running the eyes and ears and trying to work your way up through the tower while Moraine goes out and does her thing.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, I don't think it
It
was a
just,
preferred switch. I think it was just that's what the Aes Sedai ranking put upon them.
Yeah, I could see that as well.
And
I
it's
guess
funny.
we'll have to go with that. But
Maybe the twisting of the pattern needed Moraine to be the one that found them. Because to be honest, I mean, Rand would not have gone along well with Swan Sanche. To the extent that Rand was willing to trust Moraine at all, Swan Sanche is
uh,
too much of a blunt instrument. It wouldn't have
no,
worked out.
I agree with that, and that's how my read of the series too is that Moraine was definitely trying to find Rand the whole time, but the pattern didn't want him to be found because he needed to get raised right in a good wholesome community.
No, no,
Which
no. I just meant that the reason that Swan ended up, even if she had this ability to find Taviran, the reason that she got sidelined, if you will, and became the political sort of machination one, and Moraine was allowed by the pattern to essentially go on her journey and look for the dragon, was because Moraine was the right person to find the dragon.
yeah,
And on top of that, what you said that had to happen at a certain point. But anyway,
let's go on to
Sneed.
our
Anyone
final
else want
mount.
to? Oh gosh. CGI mountains.
The hills are alive with the sound of music.
Oh, nice. We can skip it. Good God. Uh,
What a.
okay,
Okay.
coming up in a scene here is one of the lines that are just astronomically stupid. I don't know, Alex, if you're going to try and stop right on it, but I had it written down. And I know we didn't mention this in the previous episodes, but it's the line "To be a woman is to be alone and never alone." Does that make sense to anybody, or is that some type of Schrodinger's cat quantum mechanics statement
Uh,
about womanhood?
uh, Trip and Aludra actually waited on that.
After I
But
passed out, or I don't
yeah,
remember this at all. Okay,
it's a good thing we didn't post that and this.
okay.
But I think both of them thoroughly said that Rafe doesn't understand women even worse than anyone ever accused Robert Jordan of not understanding women.
Oh man, that that's a good comment.
Blows my mind how much time they wasted with this scene. Like most other scenes
Oh
in
man,
this show, I can sort of see the plot significance of it. I have no idea what this
should have
is
been
supposed
cut
to be
completely.
telling me. Yeah, it should have been.
This The only reason that this is in there is to show the like surrender to the river thing, which is like, first of all, they cover that again later, and we'll cover it again like many other times. It's also not particularly important. Like, sure, it's interesting that Sidene and Sidar are different. Like, and you're wasting time in episode one to like bring up the surrendering to Sidar, which doesn't even happen for a few more episodes within the season and is ultimately not relevant. Ah,
See, I almost think you're giving him
episode
too much credit here. When you hear Rafe talk about this scene, he actually like brings up that it's like very important to like be showing the women's circle of Emmons Field to show that the women are like the government of the village.
which means he completely misunderstands the books.
Yeah.
oh, that is
Or
one of many things that shows he completely
yeah,
misunderstands the books.
or intentionally misconstrued it to push his own politics.
Yeah, well, the thing is, this scene does make sense in the sense of if Egwene is your main character, then a scene of like, oh, the coming of age, you're an adult now, you've entered into the world of adulthood, that would make sense. The problem is Egwene's
Oh
not
man.
the main character,
Or
or
we don't think she
Or
is.
well,
You're
she
you're
or
making
shouldn't
is
some
be the
she?
good
main
points.
character.
You're making some good points that I'm going to bring up later.
Well, I mean, you're right from a traditional storytelling standpoint. Um,
Okay.
you, we're going to talk about this when we do the main character discussion.
And I just have a quick thing to say here about the multi ethnic makeup of the two rivers. I know we skipped a lot of that. I know it's a trap that you can kind of get into because they did do a diversity shield. Specifically, they want all critics of the show just to harp on the ethnicities of the casting. I want to tackle it from a slightly different way. I know I've made this point before on the White Cloak subreddit and maybe in other comments, but the Two Rivers is a homogenous place that becomes diverse by Lord of Chaos. It's one of the better, more subtle plot points, but by the time Perrin's in charge of the Two Rivers, we've got tons of refugees coming over the Mountains of Mist from Almouth Plain, from Eridoman, from Terrebonne, and they're all kind of flooding into the Two Rivers, and the Two Rivers is prospering for it. The only people complaining are, Sen Bui, the Thatcher, who now has to compete with Domani clay tile makers or whatever, who are making tile roofs, and some of the women that don't like how the Domani women dress, and there's some seamstress that they want bullied or put out of there. But overwhelmingly, the Two Rivers is, or the immigration refugees to the Two Rivers is portrayed as an economic boon. And
And you make a good point. You
you'd
make a good
think for
point that
some
like
people who want to push that as their agenda, they've completely screwed that up now. But it's like if you want that payoff, you have to set it up first as something different. So if they just had a little bit of patience, if they could wait until season 4 or 5, whenever they get to the book 6 material, and they can do that whole scene with Fail berating Senbui for being a bigot, etc. Like it was in the books, it was in the lore, but they just couldn't help themselves. And more often than not, when they're pushing their agenda, they're shooting themselves in the foot.
so like I said, I think you make a really good point there. I think that Alex had a good way of framing it though within just the context of this show, like the laziness and the lack of patience for them to kind of get to their true desire. Alex, pointed out earlier that it's like, yeah, they couldn't even wait halfway through their own season.
Yeah.
Yep.
Anyways, let's throw our young women off a cliff because that's made sense in so many cultures throughout history.
Actually, we were talking about, time. I feel like we should almost talk about the money waste that this scene was as well. Like, they had to get a special, like, underwater camera to do this. And this took a ton of CGI time to, like, to get working. Like, no,
CGI mountains, CGI water,
see, I don't even
CGI
CGI
like,
rocks.
Spanx.
Yeah, exactly.
the Spanx are real, but no, see the CGI
Getting
mountain.
rid of them is
Yeah. Well, that was clearly too expensive. But yeah, that I could even live with the CGI mountains. That's whatever. But this is just wasteful, and it serves no purpose. The only purpose it serves is Sneed is right. The purpose of this scene is to show that, Egwene is now a woman, Which, notice that none of the guys had a manhood ritual. This was purely because they wanted to show Egwene first.
Cultures historically don't have any sort of coming of age rituals for men, though, so obviously there's nothing to draw on.
Yeah, right.
Oh man.
What I will make a point too is in the book he all kind of has this done a lot better where Rand sees Egwene and he's like, "Oh, your hair is braided," you know, and this is the first time he's seen Egwene with her hair braided. And now, I mean, it would be more difficult to do this in a show because in the book he has his internal monologue being like, "Oh, that means she's a woman. That means she's ready to get married." Like,
They could have shown her just
Disagree.
getting her hair braided. Like there's
but
lots of different things that
you
they could have
know,
done that would have cut way, like a lot of time would have been cut. The CGI budget wouldn't have had to be in there. They wouldn't have had this scene with like the weird little broken rock wall in the background for some reason. Like
yeah, well, and you could have just basically had that scene of him coming in and noticing that her hair is braided and her saying like, "Hey, will you dance with me?" Blah 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 blah, like they do in the book, but they decided to do this for some reason.
How about one
sure
line?
they
One line. Egwene walks in. Matt looks at Rand and says, "Wow, Egwene's hair is braided. Might be time for you to propose to her now that she's a woman."
get out of
That
here
that
with that sort of tight dialogue.
that almost sounds like you could have saved these guys $2 million.
Right? Could have.
Uh, should have hired the White Cloaks.
Yes. Yes. Okay.
White Cloaks were right.
That's coming up. Oh, this stupid scene. I think we
And
discussed
this
this
is the
ad
first
nauseum.
shot we see of Tam and his terrible, terrible beard, like the terrible prosthetic beard, and also the famous Two Rivers short bow.
Yeah. From a
And
net.
let's note this is supposed to be Bella. So I don't know if this is the pony with the hairy white feet at the bottom, but it's probably one of the 5 horses that we saw the Red Aja ride.
Oh,
Yes, yep, it does have the white socks if you look between its legs.
can you scan it just
Okay.
a little bit either way and see? Because one of the horses did just have white socks, but the other one had like the very sort
Had,
of hairy kind of
yeah,
fetlocks and stuff, right?
this is the white sock one. If you look right at the letter E and look up, that's its back
From the
leg.
mountain. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it could be one of
Just
the 5 horses. But the other
just
thing to note is Bella in the show is actually a stallion or a gelding, like it's a male horse.
yes, yeah. It's well,
That was in a news article.
don't assume the horse's gender.
Okay, Pips, you gelding
Just horse self.
herself. We also yeah
Drink number three.
we also discussed in this one how there is no Dark Rider, although the Dark Rider was in the original script. So this is where the original script was probably in one instance better than what we ended up seeing. But yeah, just the more structural problems with this, especially the ending, where Moraine somehow convinces the 4 of them to go, whereas in the books it was specifically Perrin, Matt, and Rand each saw the Dark Rider. Um, Perrin, Matt, and Rand's properties were the ones that were attacked by the Trollocs, whereas they left most of the rest of the village alone. That's what convinced them that they needed to go, rather than that very, very clunking ending to the episode, which we'll get to and hopefully right quick.
So
So
give me four
in
seconds to improve this scene. The rocks
Okay.
fall down. Rand draws his bow and looks up. There's nothing on top of the cliff. He gets nervous. He goes back to doing what he's doing, and then you get a second cut of the fade looking down at them.
Dun dun dun. Yeah, he doesn't even need to see it, but it's for the audience. But
very true. I will point out, in keeping with the low effort history of the White Cloaks, I think we're going too deep into these frames as we're going. We're hitting back on some of the stuff that we got in the more kind
yeah,
of
yeah.
detailed rewatches. So I think maybe
Also,
we try and go through it a little bit here.
yeah, on certain ones of these, I think, like this one, for example, I think we beat this scene up. I think we
Yeah.
hit it quite well. The next place where I had anything to say really was when they're doing some particular lines within the tavern coming up. But Alex, you made good points about this frame. And here we go. We got Matt gambling. And there are two comments that he makes here that are just so out of character and out of setting. The
Yeah.
first one being so instead of getting Pat and Fane delivering all the rumors to the village about war in Gildan and the false dragon and ramifications of that, we get instead that some Copland or Congar is saying something, and Matt says, "Well, she'd piss in your mouth and tell you it's raining." And that's not the idiom. The idiom is piss on your leg and tell you it's raining. Piss in your
Oh,
mouth is that's disgusting.
In addition to it being disgusting, though, like it's kind of the first part of the show that we've seen so far where it's like, oh, they're doing modern speech. Oh,
Yes.
they are rejecting the in-world sort of cursing and swearing and stuff like that. That is
Which upset
something that's
Nynaeve to no
charming.
end.
Something that's charming about the show is that it's got its own world, and like it doesn't try to be our world, you know?
Yeah, it
And
helps
that
so much with immersion.
Yes. It really shows honestly the what do you guys think about this? The selection of modern language and modern like turns of phrase, cadence, just beats really shows a lack of confidence in their own product, right? Like
or
they
no, it's
thought
lack of
that if
confidence in
they
the source material.
well, I mean 100% that, right? But I'm just saying that if they thought that they were telling a good and immersive story, then they'd be able to say, you know, frack you, right? But this show doesn't
Yeah.
believe that the audience will stick with it if they start kind of, you know, making up words. They don't think that they have the buy-in from the audience, so they have to fall back on just contemporary speech patterns.
Yeah, and it's not
Disagree
only that
strongly.
either
I think
because
it's purely low effort.
that could be. But
Okay.
the other point is so Matt makes a comment here about Rand having the sheep to keep him warm at night. There's no sheep fucking going on in the two rivers. They're all shepherds. They all make wool and tobacco. Um, but I mean, why are they doing like New Zealand stereotype jokes here? Like,
I don't know. I
also, it's
disagree.
like,
I thought
yeah,
that worked. I thought that was just two best friends kind of lightheartedly making fun of each other. Just my take
two
on it, though.
lighthearted millennials, but not two
yeah. See,
lighthearted
I
Emmys
would make
Fielders.
that point is that's actually like a fairly newer. I mean, men have always ribbed each other, but the like ribbing your friends like sexually, that kind of thing, like, oh, you must like to do these gross sexual things. That's fairly new. In older
Mm,
society, that would be more
I
likely to
think
cause a fight.
I think
I
what's
think.
new about it is how like how open it is, right? So I think if this line was, you know, the same as piss in your mouth and tell you it's raining,
Yeah,
if that was their intent, then it would have been like, hey, you know, have fun back on the farm fucking your sheep, right? Instead, he says like, oh, at least you have the sheep to keep you warm or something like that, which is benign enough and indirect enough that I actually think like yeah, man. Like I grew up on a farm. I've been around lots of men in those types of environments, and I would not at all be surprised if like my grandfather or you know great grandfather, if they had ribbed each other in similar ways.
all right, panelists split on this one.
Split
I don't
decision.
like it.
Split decision. Tie goes to Ray fucked it away.
Yeah, he did. All right, now we got the everyone claps. I think we probably stayed on this part for like 20 minutes in our
It's because
first
Egwene
episode.
has that big dick main character energy.
I mean, it's
We
literally. I mean, it's literally like a joke. Somebody does something and then everyone claps. Like, oh my god.
Yeah.
it's
He
I'll
walks
just make
in,
self-serving.
a
everybody stops what they're doing. They all look at her. I don't know about you guys. If I'm drinking with my buddies, I'm not turning around because Egwene, of all people, walks in the door.
I'll just make the quick point that in the book, it's Rand who is a little unsure about his relationship with Egwene. It's Rand that's like, yeah, I mean, I guess I'm gonna marry Egwene. I guess I wouldn't mind that, but it kind of has this sense of like, is that really all there is to life? Like, and he's not a love-struck puppy. I think it's fine them liking each other in the show because they like each other in the book, but it's Rand's not obsessed with Egwene in the show.
No.
Egwene likes Rand more than Rand likes Egwene in the beginning in
Yeah.
the series.
I think that relatively quickly within the Eye of the World and the series at large, they're kind of on the same page, and you definitely see like when they sort of finally break up, it was like both of them thought the other one was going to take it badly, right? So by the Great Hunt, like they've gotten to that point, and I think throughout the Eye of the World, it was still, he really cared for her, she really cared for him, but they were already recognizing they were branching a little bit. But I think where you're 100% right is at no point was Rand a love struck puppy.
which is all he is in this show. But
Warm
that's his
dildo,
whole
right?
character. Yeah, and that was Sneed's original creation, his term. We're giving him credit for that one.
I will admit I really enjoyed that write up that you did where you coined that term there, Sneed.
I mean, the great thing about it is it's not even disputable. Like, there are people that'll say like, "Oh, it wasn't that bad." Like, no,
Oh
like
my gosh! Oh
it
my
was
gosh! Mark time and date. Perrin is on camera with a closed mouth. Just happened to
11:29.
we randomly hit it on a freeze frame.
All
And
right,
he
let's give.
is he is he is staring at Egwene, so like I mean minus a half point for him being involved in the love triangle while his wife is still alive. Um, but plus a point for having his damn mouth closed.
-3 for being taller than Rand.
Oh God. All right, we can go
Oh,
ahead.
Perrin's actor must have excellent posture.
oh man, here we go. The whole skip. Hey, no Lady Alice, no none of that. Just and this is Moraine. Ugh,
Yeah, we beat this one to death too. So maybe we could do
we
a
did.
bigger time skip. Okay, yeah. Someone walks into a bar and Nynaeve immediately reaches for a dagger.
Gosh, they honestly, she is one of the characters, and I'm going to cover this in my characterizations questions for the panel. They ruined her, but okay,
They ruined everyone.
they did.
It's bad when even the folks on Wheel of Time show are calling her a Mary Sue.
Wait, when you say her, who do you mean? Because I think there's like three hers that could be one.
Not naive, but yeah, Egwene is at least dumb occasionally.
Uh,
Perrin about to get dismissed.
that's true. Blacksmith at the forge here. So
Yeah.
crazy that she is literally like they don't even try to make it that he's an apprentice blacksmith. No, he's just married to the blacksmith. That's as close as he gets to the forge.
Yeah, but they don't mention him forging anything throughout the
He
entire show.
literally he literally doesn't help her with anything at
So
all.
I've mentioned this already, but going through the Shadow Rising right now, all the great characterization, all this great stuff about Perrin when he goes back to the Two Rivers and he's got Fail with him, the loss of his family, the whole community rallying around him, all that stuff. You take away so much by doing this, giving him a wife that he fridges, because the context, if they even do that plot point in the show, um, the context of everything changes because he returns as kind of a guilt-ridden
Yeah.
murderer, as opposed to a reluctant hero. So
I think we hit this scene coming and going in episode 2 and 3 of the
yeah,
rewatch. So
Yeah,
we can move
the
on ahead.
one of the things
But
that
I
I think we didn't talk about in regards to this scene was, Robert Jordan, or I'm sorry, Judkins saying that the reason Perrin had to kill her was that it needed to start his hammer and axe like character arc. The
oh my
problem is they
god,
didn't show the hammer part of it at all in the
or
first season.
it
Yeah,
didn't
well,
show the axe
also,
part of it either.
yeah, also, I'll wait till we get to Perrin in the end, but there's a big, he doesn't understand that storyline at all.
He does not. Mainly because Perrin's storyline is probably one of the most, and he has some kind of angsty stuff going on. But I think overall, out of all the main characters, Perrin's storyline is probably the most prototypically masculine sort of character arc in terms of like a masculine hero's journey sort of story, of like any of the characters. And Rafe Judkins just does not understand that.
Hard to say. I'm also gonna say this shot right here is why I'm convinced that she's
She's
pregnant.
pregnant. Yes.
Yeah, or he is, based on
You
that later shot.
you don't think that men and women just feel their spouse or partner's stomach when they're not pregnant?
Maybe she got a new tattoo there. Who knows?
If he
Oh,
Piss.
okay, so this is after Matt has left the barn. I did have one thing to say here. Matt is a master of the old tongue. We know that. He is a cunning linguist. All right, I'm done. I'm here all week.
yep,
We've noted
Matt's
that
gonna
prick,
grow up just like his father.
but again, prick, shite, bitch, cunts, all those modern swears, and not a single burn me, flaming, blood and
We
bloody
don't we don't
ashes.
we don't get one of the actual swears until Tarvalon or
Yeah,
rather Tarvalon. Um, right, so what, like episode 5 we get our first one, and then that might be the only one from the series, the
and
show.
here, I know we skipped this over in our first rewatch, but there's a good line from Tom Maryland about war, where war is fools killing other fools for foolish reasons or foolish causes, and they decided to give that line to Marin Alvear. So,
Actually, Marin Alvear just essentially takes on most of the role of
Bran
Tom
and Tam
Maryland.
and Tom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, the hoof
Okay.
bang is coming up, but that was also a 15-minute segment of our previous
Parents
watch, so
Yeah.
parents did skedaddle to allow their kids to hook up in a public common room.
which is
Probably
exactly
doesn't have a lock on the door. Just probably
so.
just anyone could wander in.
So this is the other. This is, I think, also mentioned in a previous post on White Cloaks or whatever. But in a world before birth control, you do not have women behaving like this, women or men. The ramifications of coitus, if we want to get technical about it, like it does lead to children. So you
Yeah,
would
so I
not
had a
have this
long
kind of casual
conversation.
sex.
I think we can keep moving on here, but I had a long conversation with somebody about that where they said that Nynaeve does say at some point in the book, or one of the other sort of kind of herbalists in the story talks about herbs that will prevent
Heart
women from getting pregnant and stuff like that,
heartleaf
right?
tea.
Um, and I actually brought up, I was like, yeah, like that's part of the unreliable narrator, and they're like, no, what are you talking about? I was like, yes, because throughout human history in the real world cultures and societies have had herbal remedies for those types of things about preventing pregnancy and all those other things. And modern people know that pretty much none of those work. So, like the idea that like an herbalist would think you could drink this tea and it would do something is actually like, yeah, that in real world, that's a thing that they would have thought and they would have been wrong.
Mm.
It's an interesting point. Alex, we can probably skip farther ahead on this. We were taking a bit too long, and I know a lot of people have watched hours of us yak about this already. And oh, this is just gross. Skip,
They
skip,
have no
skip.
chemistry. They literally have no chemistry.
I know.
It does not look like a good kiss.
Ugh, and the pocket strawberry. Oh, and you just skip to something
The
grosser.
wood
Thank you.
chips, the wood chips in their bath. I think you brought that up when you were about to pass out. That
Yeah.
what is wrong with these Two Rivers people who can't filter out just dirt from
Oh
their
yeah,
bath
what is
water?
that?
I think it's
And
meant to
she's,
be some type of scented like leaves or
well, I'm
whatnot. So
sure,
in
I'm
the
sure.
script, I think it's deliberate, but you got to
Yeah.
wonder, is she that dirty from the road? And then she basically cleaned herself off in the tub, and now Lan is gonna get like clean
Yeah,
himself off in her
Oh
stink
my
water. Like,
gosh. Okay, we didn't bring this up before, but let's just imagine there's two options here. Option one, the Two Rivers, backwater that it is, does scented sort of floral baths.
nice.
Or option two, that was clean water, and all of that shit that we see in there is just moraine soup.
oh,
And Lan's gonna go clean himself off in it. Oh god.
Why
But
was
it's
why
even
why
they don't
was
even have the same room. Why would they share a bathtub? Like I know there are communal baths in the Borderlands, but she's Kyrianan. She's prim, she's proper. She would not be like this. And the fact that
That's all you
Rafe
need to know. You just need to know
uh,
that, oh well, there's communal baths in the Borderlands, and land is basically from Shinar,
well,
right? So like
but
it's fine.
In the script too, they're describing this relationship as between brother and sister. So in one sense, Rafe is trying to convey that there's nothing sexual between them, but at the same time, he also thinks it's okay for grown brothers and sisters to bathe naked together.
Not just bathed naked. When Land gets in, she is eyes open, staring directly at his penis.
And he's posing for her. I
Like,
just
I don't know what kind of siblings that you've ever had where, like, I mean, at least avert your eyes. Like, you're not just going to be like, nice.
And hopefully, we skip past a shot of either Land's ass or
I
his chest
nope.
coming up.
You
But
guys heard it here. Glass
yeah,
4, 5. I don't know. Fuck it.
the
Oh.
one other thing that I want to say here is how many times does Nynaeve talk about men thinking with the hair on their chests, and Land does not have a single hair on his chest.
That's why she likes him because he's not
He
like
doesn't.
other men.
He doesn't think. He can't think
Manscaped.
with the hair on his chest because he has no hair on his chest. Okay,
It's just
hoof
an
bang
empty
over.
vessel for her to fill.
Alex, we can skip this this whole part. This is so bad. Ugh,
Lighting is so awful.
Yeah.
it's expressly dark.
Why is it like blue toned? So weird.
Okay, yeah, so
Knock off Gandalf, we know. Yeah.
yeah, and this is where our second episode kind of started. Here, I want to draw a quick comparison back to the books, but I actually really like this actor as Padden Fane. I think Padden Fane as an outsider to the village, it's fine to make him whatever ethnicity you kind of want to do. I don't have an issue with that. What I do take an issue with Padden Fane in the show is they don't give him the glorious monologue that Padden Fane has at the start of the books, right? That's where it is a big info dump, but it's very entertaining. It's engaging. It does a ton of world building, and
Also actually
it
reinforced the idea because he shows up and he has all the news of the outside world and he gets
yeah,
deflated by the fact that they've already heard some of it from the gleeman that is already there, right? And so in like a few tight lines of dialogue, going back to what Alex said about like let me fix this scene with like, one line of dialogue, they could have reinforced the isolation of this village by the fact that he was so convinced that he would be the first outsider in a season, and he like is upset that he doesn't get to be the only source of knowledge and information for this entire village.
Yeah, 100%. It would have looked. You could have done the info dump that Perrin did here,
Yes.
and it would have
Yes.
been way more
Yes.
natural. Just
Yes.
bad.
my favorite shot, pregnant Perrin.
You notice that in every post-coital scene of any of the people in this show, it's always the woman who's awake and dressed and leaving.
Yeah.
Oh, there shouldn't be any of this. Okay, here's the continuation of Matt's character assassination, but
The
I don't
worst
think
negotiator ever.
yeah, I don't think there's much more to say on this because we went to this ad nauseum. We had some really good contributions from Trip and Profit on this one, so I think we're well aware. One thing, Padden Fane, the peddler, he's coming in. He seems to have a lot of fruit and vegetables for a peddler, right? He's got
Yeah,
like
I can.
hanging
Yeah,
cloves
that's
of
a good point.
garlic and other green when he's supposed to have like pins and needles and books and
Books.
other
It's
things like
actually
that.
actually is a
He's
very
not
good
a
point.
he's not a grocer, right? What
And it also
these
makes
villages
zero
make
sense.
Yeah, I could
anyway.
It,
kind of, sort of, maybe see it as like herbs, but my
Or the
thing with
spices or something, but
yeah, my thing with this one is I don't know if we talked about it. His line, "My best and poorest customer." Like, how
it's
long has
Yeah,
Matt been using him as a fence for?
how shitty of a thief? Like, if he comes once a year, it's like, see you next year or this year. What have you got for me this year? Like, who has a fence that they only see once a year? That's a pretty lousy arrangement, just as thieves go.
Yeah, right. I mean,
But
surely the first time that Patton Fane screwed him and traded like 6 ounces of gold for 3 paper lanterns, Matt would have said, "Fuck you, this clearly isn't worth the risk." But he apparently
yes.
keeps coming back and getting shit on.
That's actually a good point. So he's done this repeatedly, and he just got a super raw deal, right? So like, yeah, he's risking being publicly ostracized in a tiny village in the back end of nowhere, where like that's the end, right? Like if you get branded a thief in this kind of community, like sweet,
Yeah.
you might as well pack up and leave.
Well, I'll say this
And
is, dude, a peddler is not in some small backwoods village. No peddler is going to buy stolen goods that he knows are stolen, because if he gets caught with those, he's gonna get fucking hung. They're gonna hang him.
that's also
Like
He's
true.
going to get
They
he's
would
blamed
gonna
as
be
being, yeah.
like they'll take him out to like small backwoods villages are not gonna tolerate some outsider buying stolen goods
So,
from
so
them.
this
they
is
would kill him and take his stuff.
this is
Yeah.
where I get worried that ultimately I don't want to give them any credit for thinking ahead, but maybe, just maybe, Emmons Field or the Two Rivers is not the backwater that it is in the books. It's more of a crossroads that everybody's kind of going through on their way to get somewhere. So I get the sense that they actually changed the setting, but that doesn't mean any of this makes sense. You would not be
I
stealing from people
actually,
in your community. You would not be,
Counterpoint. Count the number of buildings. There's what,
yeah.
20?
it's
But
funny you say that though, because I literally on my page of notes here of things to bring up, I have Two Rivers Crossroads question
yeah,
mark.
anyway, we could skip ahead. We've hit on a number of points about Matt, but
Geographically, the
yeah.
crossroads argument makes no sense. We've seen wide shots of the village before, and it's like a goat track going in one side and out the other in the middle of fucking nowhere.
Alice, can
So
you skip
even,
ahead like
yeah.
5 minutes of runtime on this? Because we're going to get this whole sad Ross Rachel Mountain scene again, and it's just going to drive me to drink.
Oh,
Okay.
she's listening to the wind, guys.
Oh,
She's
did we
listening to
skip?
the wind.
Okay, so I think we skipped past the whole pool scene, but we also beat that up quite
I
well.
think the pool scene might be coming in a second. I think we see here's him looking at the
No, no,
Trolloc
no.
leavings, the Dragon Fang.
We 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 passed the cleaning rocks because if we had the listening to the wind, that's when they're together already again.
I
But
thought,
that's
I thought she might
I.
just have
I'm
been
not
standing out
saying
there first.
I'm not saying we should go back. I think this is totally fine.
Let's
I
keep
don't
going.
think
Let's.
we had any more to say. I did want to mention this real quickly about the Trolloc modern art piece that Lan is looking at here, the Dragon's Fang. From Lan's point of view, it would look like the Flame of Tarvalon. So it's a minor thing, but when those symbols get introduced, the Flame of Tarvalon or Tarvalon and the Dragon's Fang, one's the male half, one's the female half. When they're put together, it's the ancient symbol of the Aes Sedai. But this is why the Dragon's Fang is scrawled on a door, so you know that it's point down.
An orientation. Yeah,
Yeah. So this, not only would the
it's a
Trollocs
great point.
never put something in the shape of a dragon's fang, when Lan is stumbling into this, his first thing thinking is like, who the fuck made a Tarvalon symbol out of sheep carcasses? Is Moraine going insane? That's probably his first thought. And then maybe he does these stupid spins 18 inches out just to reorient himself and be like, no, thank goodness, it's the dragon's fang. But
I think that's actually a really good point that I hadn't heard made before. That like, yeah, he has no real reason to recognize it as the Dragon Fang. And to be
we
honest, I
do because
wonder.
of the shot from our camera panning overhead. But
And all
again,
of the
like
dragon fangs that we see, I feel like are like that. They're exclusively little Easter eggs put in for the audience,
yeah,
but the audience is
but
apparently not made up of book readers.
at least
So
in the one with Swan Sanche's hut getting burned down, it's on a door, and that's where you actually would scrawl it, and that's where it would be point down. But for Trollocs making this modern art project in the middle of the woods, yeah, you have no way to orient it, and because it's the same symbol upside down or otherwise, it could just as easily be the flame of Tarvalon. So stupid. Anyways,
yeah, good points. Okay, yep, she's just watching. And weird.
and let's note here too.
What an
Um,
ugly freaking sweater.
yeah.
On the plus
So
side, though, Rand is the only person that I think we've seen with multiple
with
different outfits.
well, just wait for his coat. But Sneed's review of episode one, he was the first guy to point this out as kind of the major flaw of the episode is when Lan and Moraine get the inkling that a fate is around and they don't warn him. I
Hmm?
remember reading people defending the show about the timing in that, well, they weren't sure when they first sensed it, and now Lan is out in the woods and he sees all the Trolloc carcasses. And how much time is there between when they kind of know that there is a Fade and Trollocs around in the two rivers and when the attack happens? Like, could they have run back to town to warn everybody?
It's
Let's
clearly
just
daytime.
It's clearly daytime, but Rand makes it all the way back to his farm
Yes.
with Tam before the attack happens,
Yeah,
which maybe
Yeah.
they're a lot closer in the show, but at least in the books, that's a half-day journey. That's a journey through the entire night that he has to make. So they had more than enough ample to warn the village about the Trollocs, and the fact that they don't, it's it's the biggest freaking break imaginable.
Sneed, did you have anything to add to that from your kind of write up on it?
No, just mainly the in the books. Rand actually asks. I got the book here in front of me. Rand asks Moraine when he meets her. He says like, "Well, if I had told you about a man in the woods, basically a merge roll, would that have helped anything?" And Moraine says, "Not without half a dozen of my sisters. Had I known when I left Tarvalon that I would find Trollocs and Myrtle here, I would have brought half a dozen of them. A dozen, if I had to drag them by the scruffs of their neck." So like
So
she and then Lan basically is like, well, it would have been good to know. And Moraine's like, don't blame him. We should have known. We should have figured it out. But we never considered it was beyond the pale, basically. Up, it was completely out of our mind
Yeah,
that Trollocs and Murdril could be here.
and
oh man,
Bran
I'm so
Bran
glad
out
you did
here.
that, because that goes right into the other point that I've written down here, which is that whole scene of like, do you think one of the eyeless is already here? Like, do we have that little time, you know? Meanwhile, against the books, like you said, could not have conceived that. If they thought it was even a risk, they wouldn't have come there the way that they did. And what we know from the books is that they actually make comments about how this is the farthest south Trollocs have been since the Trolloc Wars. So since 1,000 years before. So like
2000.
literally, there's zero chance in their mind that there are Trollocs down here in the eyeless, the Fades, and they're actually it's a part of the first book of like how the hell did they get here? It's
Oh,
so outside the realm of what they could have conceived of. But here in the book, it's a throwaway line, as so many other things are, of like, yeah, Trollocs are everywhere. The Borderlands are worthless, and we're basically living in the Dark One one. That's why there's no gender to the one power, because it's actually the true power.
yeah.
yikes.
And one other thing about the books, I really like. I know it's shown or it's told and not shown, which you're not supposed to do with a TV show, but where Bran basically explains to Rand that the village is only standing because of Moraine and Lan, and they were the ones to sense the Trollocs when they came in, and they rushed out
Yes.
into the village, and they got everybody rallying around and all that stuff. And here it coming up, as we'll see, it's kind of the exact opposite. Half the village is slaughtered and getting eaten before they decide to even show up.
Yeah.
And
In
Moraine does
fact,
the
you
most
could
significant property damage and probably kills more people than any of the Trollocs. But
you could look at it and say exactly half of the village was getting slaughtered and sort of running away, because we know one half of the village was teaming up to kill Trollocs.
Oh God! All right, so we've beaten the lantern and the resurrection mythology and all the errors with that. I think we had a really good discussion on it. This scene here, so here she's still not even warning anyone. I really hate the fact that Lan suggests right in this scene that they need to go. Like, yeah, one of them might be the dragon. Well, let's bug out because we're gonna die. So is he
This
being
also
prepared? But
puts the lie to that argument of they didn't have time. Because again, Moraine is standing here watching them do the light ceremony, and
yeah,
they all make it back to the village before the attack. So she's standing there, just as far away from the village they are when Lan comes up and says they're here, and she's like, well, "That's inconvenient for me later showing up to save the day."
yeah, uh, also, man, I guess first question: what was Lan doing way out in the woods? Like, was he hunting for the merge roll? Like, that's the only thing that I could think would have
Uh,
made even any sense.
if you
But
guys remember the old YouTube video Nature Walk,
yes,
no,
If you don't know it, go on YouTube and look up Nature Walk, Neature. You'll appreciate it. You're welcome. That's what Lan was doing in the woods.
All right, I'll have to check that out in between, but let's keep going.
See,
I'm
I'm
sure
trying.
I'll get some laughs in the next episode for you, and we'll do a shout out to Nature Walk.
It's pretty neat.
It's pretty neat. How neat is that? Okay, I'll shut up.
Drums, flutes, a giant metronome, and guitars again. Don't like the fact that there's no like dulcimer, there's no harp. Anyway,
What is there even to say? Layla and Perrin's
Man.
marriage problems are fixed.
because Egwene got Layla dancing.
Yes,
That
because
little armored belt that she's wearing would be handy if she was wearing that later.
Well, she needs to wear it a little bit higher.
actually it's
That's
funny.
about the right height.
I,
About the
I
right height.
I think she's wearing it when Perrin carries her out. I don't think she's wearing it when she gets stabbed.
Oh
No,
man, we'll have to check.
so here, I think the attack is started.
He just died.
So Tom,
Shock. That's quality acting right there. She looks like she just shit herself. So, that fits.
I think there's now what 12 minutes of this just egregiously grimdark, over the top, terrible CGI fight scene.
I think
It,
we hit this pretty well, and there's probably not a whole lot. See, I knew that you saw the freaking fade overlooking the town. You guys
yeah.
said that I was bullshit. It's there watching, not participating in the fight. Ridiculous.
I think this is the exact same place Moraine was standing.
That's
I think
probably
Probably.
that's the
that's
Although
probably
same
Lance.
tree.
I bet you that's
it
Lance horse with the fucking skull helmet on it.
it's Bella.
The fade's riding Bella. All the horses are Bella.
Gosh,
Probably.
what a problematic cleft palate that Fade had. That's why the Fades can't talk. They can only hiss. They have terrible cleft palates.
We got to save more
Uh,
comments for the fade for episode 2 when you actually see the sock mouth. But
yeah, yeah. Aang continues. Bella
he,
just doing the thing that she's supposed to do. Warning.
Yeah,
and
she's like,
pitching
Bella's
it
the
some
best.
great
Bella's the best
voice in this
guard
fight.
dog in the fucking entire series.
Metal hands,
Even
Narg.
better than Perrin's wolves / barking dogs.
Okay, we probably mentioned this, but I don't remember it because I haven't seen the rewatch of it yet because it still needs to get loaded up, and I was pretty fucking hammered too. But let's just compare and contrast, at least here initially, Tam's wound and Moraine's.
Yeah,
Because
we
Tam
talked at
gets,
length about her
well,
being dead.
yeah,
She has a sword in her chest.
Tam gets a tiny little cut and he's basically laid out and gonna die. Moraine gets stabbed through the chest, pulls that out, and then she like plods on for like another 3 episodes before getting healed, or 3 days at
Especially,
least.
especially when you consider that sword was slowly pressed into Tam's shoulder, and it is
Yeah,
not a sharp-looking sword. That
it's
was not a
Trolloc
swing.
poison.
He was blocking, and it got slowly pressed into him. But
hey, when
Oh
it's
man.
convenient for the plot, the Trollocs have Trolloc poison. Also, Narg is clearly the best Trolloc. Is gets his Trolloc
it's
poison.
just the alpha Chaz or Chad Trolloc.
Yeah. Oh
Oh,
boy,
okay. Skip it. Skip
Oh
ahead. I don't
man,
want to see this
that's something else right there.
that's tough.
strong female character.
Ooh, hey, he's holding an axe. It doesn't have a spike on the back.
Yeah,
It's like a
it's not his
woodsman
axe.
axe, you know.
That okay.
Him
This
rescuing
part.
his sisters from a great hiding spot.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that is
What
like
what the hell was that about? It's like go hide in the woods that are filled with Trollocs because obviously you guys weren't safe where you were completely hidden from everybody. Like
I only know you are here because I know where you guys play hide and seek. Go stand in the woods.
Oh, incredible work. Skip a minute ahead. Ooh,
Ooh,
hit a
there we
good one.
go. Think
I like
90 just got
the
drug
line
away.
here. Kind of
Yep.
fits the picture.
uh,
God, it is
we're gonna
so.
get canceled if we start calling her a Trolloc.
God, the worst part is she is a good-looking woman, and they just did everything in their power to wreck her.
That's everyone, every woman in this show, every actress in this show. They like specifically tried to make
I
them.
love him punching a Trolloc in the face when he's holding an axe. Did you see that? He gives a left-handed, really crappy swing punch,
And now
and
we're gonna look
then
for the belt, right?
Oh,
Oh,
she
she's
does have it.
okay,
Got
all
it.
right, all
oh
right,
yeah,
all right, all right, all right. Okay, go back to
right,
skipping scenes here.
right in the fetus.
Right in
Look
the
at how
fetus.
she was about to swing that hammer into him.
No,
The only argument that I've seen for that position is that she was going to bring it down on the Trolloc that he was on top of.
He was standing between her and the Trolloc. There's
But
no other reason for her to have it behind her head in like a big, like freaking splitting maul of a chop.
see,
the
I
reason
thought he was
the
like on top of the Trolloc, and she was like going to try and bring it down and behead it.
the blocking in these fight scenes is just awful. The only reason she's got her
Yeah.
arms above her head is so that Perrin can fucking stab her in the fetus.
Yeah, without
She had to
hitting her
give
in
a
the
good target.
arms. Yeah. Oh,
Like all of the other deaths in this show, it involves a very helpful participant.
dude, you want
Oh
to
yeah,
talk? We talked about Moraine
that,
taking that sword to the chest. Notice
Pulling it out
how she,
herself.
well, I was gonna say, notice how she needs to turn so that she can take it straight in the chest, because Hollywood doesn't understand that, like, blades can go into somebody at not 90 degrees.
Well, I mean, it's
so
because
she's got a flame down.
even they were looking at that Moraine scene saying that if they didn't have her turn straight on, that no one would believe she wasn't dead. Because like if that hit her from the side, that sword would have traveled through all of her internal organs.
See, I mean, even if you turned it so it had to hit her and have it go like towards her arm, like that would have been better. I mean, she still would have lost the
Pulling
arm. Like,
pulling that sword off, her arm should have fallen off. That thing completely disconnected her clavicle and like all of the muscles. Like
She shouldn't have gotten hurt in the fight from the beginning. Like, and that's the other thing is the only Trolloc to actually hit her
here we go.
is
Look,
the
this
Trolloc
Trolloc has feathers. Look at this
who
Trolloc with
throws
feathers.
gross.
You
Trolloc
were
who
bringing
throws
up
a sword from fucking 50 feet is the one who gets a hit on Moraine. Like,
That's
ah,
the best shot of the show. Oh, never mind. See, beak. That's a
there is a
beak with
beak.
feathered Trolloc. I told you, Dane, that they didn't completely ruin it. They just did a really terrible job of making the Trollocs look neat. Like, why does it have horns as well? Like, they didn't understand the idea that like the Trollocs are supposed to not all be the same. Like, some of them are like
yeah.
birds or wolves or whatever. Like,
You make a very, very good point, Pips. You have diversity everywhere in the show except when it comes to the Trollocs.
Nice combat shaky cam. Good work, boys.
I'm here all week.
oh
Light, give me
man,
strength.
Like, I know that
Yeah,
like people are bad at this, but if you just took a knife like directly like under your clavicle, first of all, that would have immediately broken her scapula. Every muscle and tendon would be just severed.
the
And
size of that knife, it either took her arm and like her shoulder off, or it went right into her heart. Like, there's not a whole lot of wiggle room there.
yeah, I mean, maybe you got it hanging by like her collarbone, but uh, we're belaboring this point. It was bad.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Oh man, the airbending. Oh, such good airbending.
this is a really good.
And
Anybody
with
who's interested in
his back to a Trolloc,
anyone
he's
who's
doing.
interested in this, watch this these shots in slow motion because Lan is up there a little bit to the top left and he's killing Trollocs. He's not even hitting them. Like they're doing
Oh,
the
yeah,
safety kind of combat, but he's basically swiping wide by like 2 feet on these men in Trolloc costumes and they're going down.
Well, I
So
mean,
this is another reason like you don't do these
with
shots.
CGI Bruds Blaze.
You
you can
don't do
even
these
see
brush
it here. Look at where the edge of the sword is, and look at where the Trolloc is. There's a solid 2 feet of difference.
You know what's funny about that is that I think you brought this up, Alex, like the when to use CGI and when to use practical effects. Right here, why is he even like? Why are there real like actors playing Trollocs that he's fighting right now? They're small in the distance, like barely visible. This would have been the perfect time to CGI that sort of fighting going on around.
Or just give him a fucking foam sword and let him swing his heart out. Let him
For that,
wreck the shit out of some extra wearing a catcher's chest protector and keep it moving. Like,
yeah.
this is just lazy.
And looks bad.
Yeah, it looks terrible. And
Brain's stance in this is hilarious.
Oh yeah, she's hitting her big operatic solo right now.
I would have loved to have watched them seen this, like film this, because imagine like there's no soundtrack because there's a terrible soundtrack playing in the show. Just imagine seeing this happening outside with like no sound or anything going on.
No fireballs, no magic, no nothing.
Like they had to put the
lightning.
soundtrack over it because all the people watching are just laughing their freaking asses off.
God.
Or how about
Pike's
the
interpretive dance solo?
how about
and I honestly have to think, are they really trying to establish that like those moves and those maneuvers that she's doing are integral to being able to channel the power? Because and this is again where it gets contradictory even within the show itself. But in the next episode, you see the Aes Sedai with her hands chopped off, kind of implying, oh, if you don't have your hands, you can't channel, which doesn't make any sense if you know this.
They say it outright.
But then Valda contradicts that himself later. It's like, I know you can channel without your hands. It's like, well, then why did you cut off
Oh
that?
yeah, that scene is special. He contradicts himself multiple times in that scene, but
Yeah.
For
right.
save it for later one, but I really don't like
Yeah.
the dance moves here. I really don't like this whole Trolloc fight. I would have hoped they simply would have stuck to what was in the books. A lot of this happens off screen, and I think you could have gotten more story development and at a lower cost if you just stuck with what the books had.
All true.
I actually don't hate this from an execution standpoint. Or I'm sorry, I don't hate it from a concept standpoint.
I was gonna say what?
No,
What?
Alex, we already talked at very, very great length about that in the previous episode.
that's true.
I'll concede that point.
And Alex, we've already talked about how you're only allowed to defend the show like once for every couple of episodes we do.
And not when you're stone cold sober like you are right now. You have no excuse.
Fair enough.
Oh man.
I know in and around here, there's some very, very poor CGI shots, especially when the rocks start getting pulled out of the wine spring.
Yeah, we talked through all that pretty extensively. I think we can speed click through a lot of this. Like it's
yeah, I think
And the
pretty much-
fight. It is what it is. Like
We just would have done this, right?
yeah, we hit this scene pretty good because if you remember, there was only a few minutes left of the episode when we started our recap. So we had an hour and a half over the last 7 minutes. I think we hit this all pretty strong.
There's dead wife. One thing we should note is when we see the horses again coming up, whether or not they're the same
Yep.
500
Yep.
Aja horses.
We'll look.
For that. She is just completely fine, even though she's arguably been stabbed the most. Ugh.
Just covered it with her hair, so she's good.
Yeah.
Oh,
Nynaeve's gone.
Yeah.
The one good line, I guess, from this is so
look
we're
at them
past
just sadly just watching their children leave with a stranger. Their whole village is burned down, and now their kids are leaving, and they're just like, "Yep, everything's fine."
and
Let's try and get a shot of those horses.
and there are 300 Trollocs advancing on them, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
Coming
but
down
we'll
the
be
mountain.
fine. All
Okay,
right.
okay.
Dapple.
Can you
Black.
just play it?
Oh, I'm sorry. Dapple, black, black.
The wind was not the beginning. There are neither beginnings. nor
Maybe they
ends.
have a sixth.
So
one.
it's 4 pure blacks, or they just
Okay.
painted the
Yeah.
socks on the one.
All right.
Or maybe they have a dozen horses. Who knows? Oh, okay.
I definitely feel like Aldib was in that scene though for sure with the Red Sisters. It really does look like like it probably is Aldib and maybe Bella in the background.
I had to
Yeah.
save some money somewhere. All right, so that was a bit of a recap. We touched on a lot of the points that we might have missed in our previous 5.5 hours of reviewing this first episode. There wasn't a whole lot. I think we got into repetitive discussion a little bit or hammered home some additional jokes, but hopefully everybody who's watching this is enjoying it so far. And I guess the final part of this recap of the first episode that we want to get into, Pips, is a bit of a panel question discussion about themes. I open the floor
Yeah.
over to you, man.
I think Alex, you were going to end your screen share here. That'll let you queue up for the last part that you're going to bring up, and then I'll start a screen share and navigate through. So, sharing my screen with you guys now. Just let me know once you actually have it.
I am watching your stream.
All right, so
Wait,
basically what
sorry.
I'm
It's we have spinning. Yeah.
All right, you guys lost the stuff. All right.
It might be a connection issue on your side.
I'm just gonna restart it here. For those of you who are watching this later, we'll either edit this out and clean it up, or it'll be a classic sign of low effort White Cloaks activity.
I see it.
Are you guys able to see it?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, cool. So I'm not going to do a whole bunch of stuff here. The conversation that I wanted to start, so we're going to have some thematic conversations, try and look at the episode as a whole versus the sort of short takes that we took, right? But the thing I wanted to get to, because this builds into, it's an important aspect of the show and the story generally, is the characters themselves, and then also this sort of mystery box kind of shenanigan story that they decided to give us about the who's the dragon, right? So what I want to do is go through character by character here and just ask you guys to say, like, what do you think this episode 1 has established or missed completely? Just, free form your thoughts on each of these characters as an individual, and then their arc that we know is supposed to be built up to. So starting out with Rand, obviously the dragon, we all know that because we aren't people who are apparently Ragenor's target audience. But the question is just that, like, how do you guys think the show did of giving us our first look at the character Rand?
Can we go negative 10? Like he is
Sure.
not
I mean, like,
he is
you
not a
can
character.
say
Yeah, it
both.
didn't show him at all, is what I would say. It didn't introduce anything about him in any sense that would like make you think like, oh, this is a important character or this is someone. I mean, we get almost nothing. He's probably the most bland character in this first episode.
Yeah, we discussed the reverse Bechtel test ad nauseum. Alex, you went through every one of his scenes, and it's like 6 out of 8. He's always mentioning Egwene. That's all he does in this whole show is simp
I was
after Egwene.
actually hoping to get Alex to weigh in on that for the wrap up here, but yeah,
he is not a character.
Yeah, I mean,
in the
being,
books, he's the main
being
character.
generous, the complete list of things we find out about Rand al'Thor is from the scene that they're walking down the mountain. You can say that we know that his mom died. We can say that he's a shepherd, and we can say that he has a good relationship with his father. Those are the three things, and then from there, just looking at Rand scenes, you get, and I'm just going through my notes here. Give me a minute. Good Lord, there's a startling not any Rand in my notes just because he doesn't do anything. Yeah,
I would agree with what most of you
Rand and
guys are saying.
Egwene are in a relationship, I guess. Like they're dating, maybe. Matt knows Rand well enough to see that he and Egwene broke up. Tam is stabbed and tells Rand to leave. Rand refuses to leave his father. Rand gets his father on a horse and gets him back to town. Yeah, there ain't shit here.
Okay, so I agree with what you guys are saying. I think that the only thing that I pulled out that I think that is true to the book, so true to the actual character of Rand that they actually do show us, is pretty slim, but I'll say they do an okay job of building the importance or strength of the friendships between Rand, Matt, and Perrin. I don't think that it's done in the way that it is to the books. I don't think that it is done particularly well in terms of highlighting any of the characters and their personalities. But I think that anybody watching this would take that, like, okay, these are three good friends, which is important to the story. Like, okay, they got the literal bare
Yeah,
minimum.
but
But I think that
as to
you guys are
Bart,
right that they don't separate themselves out at all. They
I,
really.
as to Barney Harris's point from his on-set interview, he has no idea why these three characters would be friends. Like that. Okay, you establish that they're friends, but I mean, would I want to be friends with a simp like this? Probably not. But at the same time, I wouldn't want to be friends with a thieving lowlife like Matt, or a well, Perrin is ultimately when it's
Despicable
revealed
human being.
he's the ultimate scum, right? Because he went and married a girl even though he didn't love her.
We're
And
gonna talk about those other characters. Don't
all
get
right,
sidetracked. So
if
I'll
we
ask
want to
you guys
move
the
on to the next
question, fairly pointed here. I think Rand's overall character arc is defined by duty, um, and ultimately self-sacrifice, dedication, loyalty, those types of things. Loyalty both to his actual friends, but also to sort of humanity writ large. Um, do you think that we've seen any of the, I think, the backbone, the grit,
no.
and sort of the innate goodness that is really what we see of him in Eye of the World. We don't see him fully formed, but we do see someone who, you know, really will straighten his back and take a load when it is asked of him, right?
In the show, without Egwene, Rand is not a character. Well, he's not a character, but that's his only character trait. Is basically
Okay.
simping after Egwene. That's it. So
Anyone
you
have
get
anything to
nothing
add to
else.
that?
I guess as far as innate goodness, I will give them he and Perrin buying Matt the lantern. As far
Okay.
as duty and toughness, uh, I guess technically he killed Nard, but it was just so. Uh,
Yeah, I think we
it
talked
just
about that one when they had him take his dad back on Bella instead of a litter that he drug by himself through the night. I think that we talked a lot about the damage that was done to his character there.
Yeah,
Um,
I'll say I'll give them a 2 of 10 for killing Narg, and they passed up the 10 of 10 for the litter, which unfortunately is, when you're talking about positive things about this show, I mean it's like you're picking out twos and threes. Maybe they hit a four, and they walked away from
yeah.
all the sevens and eights and tens, and it's just like, guys, come on.
I'm going to sidestep the obvious joke about the casting and move on to Matcham Cawthon. All right, great
Completely
picture of
ruined.
Matt, by the way. Got a wide brim hat. He's got a fox head medallion. He's got a scarf. That is a level of detail we will not see applied in characterizations in the show, I'm sure. Um, okay, Matt Cawthon. I honestly don't even have a question here. I think you guys, if any of you just feel like you haven't vented enough about the destruction of Matt's character, please, here's your time.
I've done enough, so I'm not going to say anymore.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think this has
what's
been done to death.
what's already been said, the shithead who cares about his family is not the charming rogue that representation that they thought it was here. Just pass. F's all around.
Yeah, I think I think there is. Yeah, we don't get a POV chapter of him in Eye of the World, but we still see a lot of his character, and we know from the rest of the next 14 books if you want to throw New Spring in there, although that doesn't have anything to do with him. So the next 13 books, he is the character that will attempt to avoid hard work, ultimately will do the hard work, right? So like he'll bitch and moan and he'll try and avoid it if he thinks that he can, and importantly, and he doesn't think that him shirking will hurt anyone. If he
What's the
thinks that
comment
he can
made about
avoid
him?
something,
Never seen someone work so hard to avoid working.
yeah. Um, in the show, a common thief. I mean, worse than a common thief. Yeah, bad. Okay.
Actually,
Perrin.
if we're talking about appreciation for the books, I want to give the books a real shout out here because in the books, the first thing that Rand really thinks is basically, man, unloading all of these heavy casks out of this wagon are going to suck, but I'm going to do it anyway. Meanwhile, Matt is trying to hide and talk to Rand so that he doesn't get seen, so that he doesn't have to unload the heavy casks. But he ends up doing it anyway. Like, way to hit the characterization in the first 5 pages past post prologue without actually spelling it out or having any big significant moments. It's just fantastically done.
Yeah.
It is crazy how in a book that can literally only tell you things, we're still getting shown more and told less than in the show.
Yeah. And there's another bit about Matt's characterization in the show, and it's not necessarily this episode, but it's later on. And we talked a little bit about how Rafe complained about, or Rafe said that Amazon told him that they needed to do more with Matt's character. So I've been giving the show a little bit of credit for adding scenes conceptually. Why would you not in this show Matt carrying Rand? Like that is the like if you're going to add scenes to build character, that is the one you should add. Rand is dying of channeling sickness, and Matt's dragging his ass across half the country.
Well, that's
Uh,
that's for a later episode where we can go
Yeah.
through that. But I mean, they don't even do channeling sickness because they
Right.
don't want to give the hint that Rand could be the dragon and is channeling. So
Yeah.
it's a ripple effect of some of the creative choices that they decided to make,
I
and it
agree.
it
I agree
unravels
with
the pattern. It's that bad.
See, I
I
was
agree with
having
the
a
point that you made about the introduction to Matt and Rand both that we got there in the books versus what we got in the show. I think that's a real strong point there. I do, before we get too far into just thematic stuff and big things, I do want to just finish up running down these characters because then I have one final question at the end of it. So, Perrin. I
Butchered.
mean, yeah, I
Well,
think that
his
we've already
wife
said
got
this.
butchered, but
He's uh, he's the husband to the village blacksmith, and I guess that's about as much as I feel like I need to say on it.
Yeah, I
and,
think
and he's a
they
skunk.
missed the thing about Perrin is not it's like if you notice, Perrin actually doesn't have any issues with killing people throughout the series. He, in fact, there is a scene later in the books where Perrin is, it's in Lord of Chaos. He's fighting to try to save Rand, and he's talking about how there are some of these ale that he's killing in this battle are too short to be men, and he's basically like, well, whatever. I'll think about that later. And so, like
It's true. Perrin's the
Matt and
only one
Rand,
of the three.
Matt and Rand have huge issues with killing women. Perrin is like, hey, if I have to do it, I have to do it. So the thing that Perrin struggles with is he doesn't want to be a lord. He just wants to be a blacksmith. And also the idea tied up in that is like, am I going to lose myself to the wolf? Perrin has no issues with violence. So they completely misunderstood what the axe and the hammer represent to Perrin, and they reduced it to this like violence thing. And so they made it, oh, well, let's have him kill his wife. That's why he's scared of violence. But that's not who Perrin is. Perrin's not scared of violence.
Yeah, and,
See, I will
I
and
think
say
that's a
that
really good point. That he's not afraid of violence. He actually is afraid that he is too interested, that he likes it too much, right? So they
yes,
almost have it precisely backwards.
Yeah,
It's
Perrin, it takes a
he
lot to
his
get
internal
Perrin to the
monologue.
point of violence, but when Perrin gets to the point of violence, he is there. Like,
And he's addicted to it, and that's what scares him. Like in the when he rescues Fail later on in the series, I think it's in Knife of Dreams. I mean, the aftermath of that battle, it's all about him kind of coming down off the high, off the adrenaline, off the sheer life that he's feeling when he's in a fight for his life, and he worries that he's going to get addicted to that kind of sensation.
Have you guys
And
read Brandon Sanderson's The Way of Kings sort of
no,
series? Um, any of you that have, so the thrill that is identified in that series, it's a thing that is sort of innate in the Alethi, I think. And one of the main characters, Dalinar, um, gets taken over by this, and I feel like I wonder if Sanderson got the idea of the thrill by basically reading Perrin's character, because
yeah.
exactly what you said.
And I think there's also an element of Robert Jordan's own catharsis with his own
Very
experiences in
much.
Vietnam with Perrin and
Yeah.
what he was struggling with. But I mean, I think that's true for all the three.
yeah, I don't
In the
get how
show, none of that.
anybody read that first Perrin chapter in The Dragon Reborn and came up with this guy. That first Perrin chapter in Dragon Reborn is unreal. Like, that is one of the best single character battle scenes that has ever been written, both from a descriptive standpoint of what's actually happening and also the internal look into the character's mind. Like, that scene is incredible.
I don't think that you even need to look at it from that perspective. Where again, episode one, the eye of the world. How can you read Perrin's POVs in the eye of the world and think, yes, we're doing a good faith adaptation of that character, instead of seeing him contemplating killing Egwene to
From the
save
Ravens,
her from being eaten alive by sort of shadow infected ravens, getting torn apart by beak and claw. He's like, I'm going to kill her to save her from that. Instead, we get this just limp, just sad, like, ugh. All right.
Yeah,
Any final thoughts?
fuck Rafe Judkins for this fucking show and this representation of what is a
yeah.
phenomenal character.
Yeah.
Uh,
So
Egwene Alvear. Um,
so she's the one that they aged up. They didn't age up
yes,
anyone else. We went through that. I also think they modernized. They didn't age them really,
yes.
but they had to make her the same age. They had to make her a dragon candidate, which just torpedoed the whole lore about the dragon being a feared figure because of the taint. But they fucked the magic system up. They fucked the prophecies up. They fucked Egwene up too because uh, this is one thing that I think we've discussed Taviran at length, but what we didn't discuss yet is from a literary point of view what a Taviran ultimately is a free Deus ex machina for Robert Jordan. It's his get out of jail free card. It's where events need to happen with particular characters because the pattern needs it to happen. So coincidence and everything else lines up. Now he does a brilliant job of it about establishing it in the lore, guiding threads in the pattern. He puts in some meaningful stakes and that there are downsides to being Taviran, but there are a lot of parts along the story where things inexplicably happen and RJ is able to course correct when if you're actually writing what would characters logically do in a particular situation, they would not follow along like this. So a throwaway example is when Davram Bashir shows up. He's chasing Mazrim Taim into Camelin. He wants to
Just
arrest him
gets on board with the Dragon Show.
immediately, right? So it's if Davram Bashir had his individual agency and would not get caught up in the swirl of Taviran, what he would just have introduced to the story is one of the great captains who is now an antagonist to Rand because Rand wants Taim for the Black Tower, um, and if he immediately gets one of the borderland great captains against him, that could be a bit of a problem. But Rand is Taviran, so within half a conversation, Davram Bashir decides, oh, you know what? I'm going to be your general. ta'veren.
Yeah,
Like
so I
it's a
think
plot convenience device, but you can make the argument that actually detracts away from the character and the character's agency. So a lot of people have an issue with Egwene being made ta'veren in that you rob her of that agency.
that's really the point that I was going to make. That's very well put. Either of you guys have anything to add there?
Yeah, I would just say is like along with that, that in the books, Egwene uh wants to go with them. She's kind of like her thing is, well, I'm not going to get left behind. I want to go on this adventure. She's not forced to go. She
She's
chooses to go.
she's the
He's the
proactive
only
one.
one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so by their attempt to include her and make, oh, women can be just as important as men, they actually have made her character weaker and made the woman an actually very good character in the story. They made her weaker and less agency, have less activity.
So this is again these people, they cannot get out of their own way. Just like what I brought up earlier about the homogenous Two Rivers becomes multicultural, multi-ethnic by Lord of Chaos from refugees, and the place is improved by it. You had a great arc. You had a setup with a payoff later, but they couldn't get out of their own way, and they end up shooting themselves in the foot. I think that making Egwene a ta'veren, same thing. You had a good character with agency, with doing more things on her own and getting things done. Like how she's able to persuade everyone in the White Tower to get on board with her side, how she's able to unite the Aes Sedai ultimately, that's on her alone. It's not because she is a guiding wire for the pattern. So
We'll
congrats. You,
say
you stole that from Egwene, Rafe, you
we'll
fucking
say there's
moron.
only one thing that I will sort of give them credit for here, and this is a joke that I made with Dain. I think that episode one actually introduces the concept to us that in addition to being related to like the entire rest of the royal family from Andor, um, episode one has given us the reality that Rand is now going to be Eskimo brothers with Gowan, which is
Oh
interesting
man.
because Gowan's absolute hatred for Rand makes so much more sense when Rand is the dude who banged the girl he really wants.
Oh
That
man.
tracks. But the
That's
only
So
heartbreaking.
they
about the
fixed Gowan. They ruined all the other characters, but they fixed Gowan. Rafe Judkins, you genius.
Oh my God,
Yeah.
that is a fair point. But the only thing that I will say about Egwene is that I dislike Show Egwene about as much as I dislike Book Egwene.
They nailed it. Nailed it.
It-
She
They
is just as annoying.
captured the essence. Oh
yeah,
god.
so
Yeah,
yeah,
Did it
I'm
just
gonna Egwene defender, so I actually like her in the books basically the whole way through. But
I like
that's
her character.
neither here nor there.
I
Oh,
dislike
I love
her. I
her.
like her character.
yep, she got shit done. I will give her that 100%. But the uh,
And it's
yeah,
also it's one of the best character arcs within the story, right? Like her ultimate sacrifice really redeems her character, and it makes it into a great arc. And now I'm not really sure that we'll ever see that Egwene, even if this show manages to not get canceled. Like we'll never see her be bad and go to those extremes to accomplish her ambition, and then have to redeem herself because she's going to be perfect and the best the whole time. So,
yep,
no
100%.
shame.
fuck this show.
Right, Nynaeve Almira, Village
That's
Wisdom. So
fantastic photograph.
to
That's my
start
Nynaeve.
off, I just want to say episode one showed us exactly zero of Nynaeve healing anyone.
Yep.
It introduced that she knew that she was channeling the whole time,
Yep.
uh, and she gets taken away by the Trollocs. And we marked it already. First fake death of the show. Uh, which ultimately ends up that she like doesn't really have some of the actual important sort of like character defining moments of the early part of the series. Um, so I feel like honestly, like okay, so I said before that I was going to bring up how much they ruined her. Her holding her knife when Lan and Moraine walk in, like we see her stabbing and shanking people and grabbing her knife so many times in this season, and in episode 1 they already started the ball rolling. She's not just somebody who is insecure about her position in the village and is therefore sort of aggressive in ensuring that she gets her due respect, which is kind of her character to begin with, right? Instead, she is, perfectly competent and whatever, and just angry and violent for no fucking reason, right? And then she is not a healer. Like the fact that they took away her core identity of a healer within the
Well,
first episode of the show,
she tries once with
amazing.
Senbui, but as you pointed out, that tourniquet's probably the worst thing ever applied in the history of medicine.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
I can almost see what they were trying to do with the knife thing. Like it's of all the things that are internal, I can sort of see how it might be hard to make her seem standoffish without just being just a complete and utterly unlikable person, which is harder to
Did
fix
they
in
get her
television than in the
Did
books.
they get her to be a complete or to not be a complete and utterly unlikable character? Is that something we're saying they accomplished?
Or not, but they're going to attempt to accomplish it. So I could see how that knife might be like them trying to show like that she's irritated by things, but again they're so heavy-handed in everything that they do that a knife, pulling a knife is not the same thing as pulling a braid. Like that's
Yes.
they overplayed their hand.
And as you point out there, they had like a consistent trait for her to use to express that. Uh,
Yeah,
all right. Anyone else? Anyone else want to
No,
pile on this?
I think they wrecked all five. But what's your final question that you're going to ask us then,
Nope, we're
Pips?
doing one
Oh,
more.
one
We're
more.
we're going to a different artist here. This is the Moraine, as Dain pointed out when we were getting these slides ready here.
Yep.
All right, so Moraine's character, Dain, you wrote extensively. Try and keep it like 30 seconds or a minute here.
Well, I'm going to
How
keep it
how
to
did they destroy her character?
they destroyed.
In
So
episode 1. In
in
episode
episode
1, what
one,
have we seen?
we've already seen that she's an idiot. Okay, this is one of the first things that they ultimately admit about Moraine is that she's out to find the Dragon Reborn. She knows when the prophecy happened of when the Dragon Reborn was born, and it was 20 years ago. And she does not know if it's a boy or a girl. She does not know where he or she lives. She does not know anything about them. So the only thing she knows is the age, and is the age right? So she just knows how long she's been failing at finding out anything. It's like I marked the day in my calendar when I started work, and I've done nothing for 20 years, and I'm still at square one. So she is a complete, full on, full blown moron. And everything else about this show, as we'll see in later episodes, it just proves that she has no idea what's going on, and she is a stone cold imbecile. Like what you pointed out, Pips, one of your best insights in our rewatch here is Nynaeve knows that she can channel because listening to the wind equals channeling. Well, in the next episode, we'll see Moraine gives the explanation to Egwene that listening to the wind is actually channeling. There's one power. It's the same thing. It's one thing. And you village wisdoms, you all. So Moraine knew that Nynaeve could channel, and then she straight up lies in a later episode. So the only way that she's not lying is if she's an imbecile, which is also a legitimate point. Like she probably is. I think they made her what was once the one of the smartest characters, one of the most cunning characters in the whole series, the book series. They just turned her into a stone cold moron, and that's not Moraine.
I'm
I'll
gonna
throw
pose a
in.
question here, and I'm
Okay.
I'm, I'm curious to hear your answers. Let's remove rumors of Fort Tavera there. Let's just completely get rid of that line.
Okay.
As if they hadn't done that reshoot to add it.
Yes. So then explain to me the difference then between show Moraine and book Moraine up to that point. Because I agree with you
Okay.
100% that
Got
she's a
it.
fucking
So,
imbecile.
I got
so,
it for
so
you, man.
th-
I
this
got
is
it. The point I was going to bring this up right now, which is that in the books, she's planning, right? She shows up, and within the first couple seconds of meeting the main sort of people she's interested in, she comes up with a reason to give them this silver penny that or silver mark maybe. Either way, she gives them a coin, right? And
Yep.
she imprints that coin with a finding, which we later find out about, right?
Yep.
And then for the entirety of the first book, she knows like generally where people are until they lose that coin. She knows that they're alive. She knows that they're moving. She kind of knows things about them, right? And can go and find them. Easily named finding, right? In the show, they just like, nah, she never did that. And for the rest of the show, it's a thing that she doesn't, she knows absolutely nothing about where any of these people are or where they're going. And so she's just going to Tarvalon, and Nynaeve is like, well, what about the others? And she's like, ah, it'll be fine. It's like the mechanism that would have made her seem like less of an idiot for the rest of the season could have just been established in episode 1 by just doing what she did in the books.
Yeah,
Uh,
although I think
uh.
I think the point about the coins is it's somewhat problematic because there was a minor element of compulsion added to that, or at least it is in a throwaway line towards the end of The Eye of the World, where she notes that they should have fallen into line, except that they were so damn stubborn in the Two Rivers. But this kind of goes more to a structural story point in that Moraine is not the main character. She's the Gandalf figure. But in the I think they wanted to make her the main character. Hell, they've got like several episodes that are just about her scissoring Swan. Um, but the mystery in the book, to the extent it's a mystery, is what does this woman want with us? It's all from Rand's point of view, a couple pairing points of view, but she's kind of a shady figure. She's not fully trustworthy. But that's the mystery of the story: is what is she here for? What does she want with
I
me
have a
as
great
Rand?
point to dovetail on this, so when you're done.
But in the show, she says outright, "One of you is the Dragon Reborn," and I'm too big of an idiot to figure out which one of the five of you it is. Like she knew
Hmm.
almost like, oh my god, that's the only way she couldn't discover from just looking at them. Like one, it's gonna be a male. All that fucking female dragon stuff is bullshit. The five-headed dragon stuff is just retarded bullshit. She
She knew
knew
they were
almost
born on
right.
Dragon Mount.
Yeah, she knew almost right away who it was. She was chasing uh, a lead because it fed from Tam Althor, right? There was a Illianer captain who was ostensibly from the Two Rivers, so she could have figured out asking around within half a day, and I think she does. So I'm pretty sure Moraine knows it's Rand and Perrin probably by the time they're leaving the Two Rivers. And then she's being coy about it as to why they need to go to Tarvalon. And she never actually drops on them that one of the Dragon Reborn. She doesn't want to devastate them with that info. So, anyways, book mystery. What does this shady Moraine character want with us? Show mystery. Which one of the five of us is the Dragon Reborn? And as a result, they underdevelop those five characters to keep the stupid mystery alive. And they assassinate Marine's character because they have to make her incredibly stupid not to also clue in about this mystery.
And I'd also have to
So,
say that they. All right, go ahead.
so I have heard book. I've heard people who defend this show say, yes, the show wasn't good, but it's the bad
That's how I like to
decision to
defend this show
use.
too, by starting off and saying that it's bad.
Well, no, they straight up will say, like, yes, it was bad, but I believe in season two. I believe in season one they made a terrible mistake going with the Dragon Reborn mystery, and now
And
that
hiring Raginor.
well, and now that we're not going to have the Dragon Reborn mystery, the show is going to be good again.
That's
And
copium.
and it's pure copium. But I hear even people who, it would have been so easy to keep the Dragon Reborn mystery going and still use these characters and still keep
Yes.
the exposure to them and their power levels relatively balanced. You give Perrin his wolf thing, that's his one thing. You have some throwaway line like the Dragon Reborn was so powerful that even the beasts of the forest fought with him against the darkness. You give Matt his old tongue, his dagger or his quarterstaff, and a little bit of his luck, and you say, the Dragon Reborn is super lucky. I mean, it's a super easy throwaway line. Or the Dragon Reborn will realize his old lives, and that Matt might be speaking in the old tongue because Luz Theron is coming back into his mind. And then you give Rand the ability to channel, and you just say, the Dragon Reborn was the greatest channeler this world has ever seen. And by that, you've elevated all three of these main characters. You've moved them from level 1 to level 10. And from there, you've kept the Dragon Reborn mystery. Each of these characters now has something that makes them worth a fuck. But so it's not the Dragon Reborn mystery that's screwing this up. It's Judkin's need to sprint to Tarvalon so he can do Aes Sedai politics nonsense. Like, it's not the Dragon Reborn mystery. This could have been done competently, as kind of like a hook, and I wouldn't have done it, but I could see how it could have been done. They just did it badly.
Yeah, and that's the point kind of I was going to make, is that I think the Dragon Reborn mystery idea, all of this, it's kind of they don't want the Dragon Reborn to be a part of the story at all. Rafe sees that the fact that this is a story about the Dragon Reborn fighting the Dark One is a bad thing. He wants to tell a story about female wizards who are powerful, and they have their politics, and they run the world, and and that's what he cares about. And so the show, and like, basically, even in this first episode, Moraine doesn't look like she's concerned at all. She doesn't look like she cares at all about who the Dragon Reborn is. She shows infinitely more concern about herself and her Aes Sedai bullshit throughout the whole show
And her
than she
sex
ever
life.
shows about who is the dragon, where is the dragon, what is he doing. So I mean, she doesn't care because Rafe doesn't care. He wants Moraine to be the main character. He doesn't want there to be any Dragon Reborn at all.
Oh my
Those are all
god.
really good points. I want to circle back to Dane's comments about Moraine so I can wrap up kind of Moraine, and then I have one question for you guys. I'll give it back to Alex, and he'll run sort of some video montage backdrop stuff while we discuss some of these broader themes like you guys are talking about. The thing I wanted to go with Moraine, going on to Dane's point about how she was destroyed, was the idea that the difference between book Moraine and show Moraine is summed up in the old kind of adage that it's better to keep your mouth closed and be thought a fool than to open your mouth and leave no doubt. Show Moraine leveraged book Moraine leveraged the mystery to always be more knowledgeable and smarter than maybe she really was, but she was always in control of the narrative. And so that made her seem like she always knew everything, even when she didn't know. And we later learned some of those type or situations. Show Moraine is just constantly revealing the limits of her knowledge. So anyway, I think that's where my view on how they wrecked her character.
And
So I'm just going to ask you guys if we can go one at a time here. Who is the main character from episode 1?
Moraine.
oh,
So
I
we
would
got,
say Egwene.
I'm in the Egwene camp.
I am also in the Egwene camp. So Alex, you're the outlier. Defend your position here.
She has the intro, she has the outro. Rafe Judkins
Uh,
has told us she's the main character. She has far and away the most lines. She's the only one who drives the plot. She's
he
in
makes good
all of her
points.
scenes. She's in a position of power. Even when she gets, I mean, just think back to the think to when she enters the bar. She is so amazing that Land has to go in and give her a dramatic entrance. Think about the scene in the bathtub. Land has to be like showing his dick off to her while she oogles him. She's that great. Like Moraine is this story is or this show. One of the reasons that it struggles is because Rafe made Moraine both Rafe made Moraine Frodo, Gandalf, and Aragorn all at once.
I think you're making good points, and I will agree that I know going into this, and I still know in the back of my mind that Moraine is who Rafe wanted to be the main character, right? I think that he's actually so incompetent that he still fucked that up, and Egwene managed to be the main character from episode one. I make that argument based only on the sort of within the episode a narrative arc, right? So we talked about how Egwene had sort of the coming of age story. We see her like have her relationship with Rand. You see that like in its most, I suppose we're supposed to accept, mature form. Then we see her sort of grow beyond the scope of that relationship, reject the relationship in place of other desires and things that she wants for herself. So exercising her agency to go and be transformational and go do other things. And then we see her dealing with sort of the attack and all of the other stuff kind of at the same level as most of the other characters, and being tied up in the sort of, you know, hero's journey commencing towards the start. So I will say that, yeah, Moraine is definitely the story. She is the wheels and the engine of like the story moving, but as a narrative inside this episode, I think that Egwene is the only one who actually has a story to tell. The rest of them have a few cameos, but like Egwene is the only one who actually has an arc.
Well, I agree with you that she's the only one that has, sort of a beginning and a middle and an end. I'm going to also add this on to the burning pile of Rafe is a bad feminist. Uh, 75% of what's going on here is about her relationship, which I think detracts from, her character. Clearly not as much as it detracts from Rand's, but it does detract a little bit from it. I'm
I
also going to say that she is not significant in the fighting at the end. She doesn't kill a Trolloc. She doesn't. I mean, even Rand kills a Trolloc, and Rand is just basically a warm dildo. Um,
Okay, Sneed, Dain, any final points on this score, or otherwise, I think we ask, hey, comment down below in the comment section and tell us who's the main character.
Yeah, I mean, I think it could be taken either way. Egwene has the kind of arc, basically. Moraine clearly is the preferred point of view. Uh, I think if Rafe could have gotten away with it, he would have actually just nixed every character. It would have just been a story of Wizard comes in, picks up Egwene, and they take off on their adventure. Uh, but
I
yeah,
think
I
he's
mean, I
right
think
about
it's
that.
I think Alex made a good point about Moraine basically being the driving force of everything, and yeah,
I got nothing. This is kind of like asking what's worse, like nutty ground, like classic brown or nutty green crunch as types of shit. Like it's they're
yeah.
All
both
right.
stinky and
Well,
bad.
Either
with
way,
that
not
eloquent
Rand is
turn
the
of
wrong
phrase,
answer.
with that eloquent and graphic turn of phrase, I'm going to stop my stream. Alex, you can go ahead and take over, run us a backdrop, and then I think we have some time for free form on just kind of thematic stuff where they drop.
Within this episode, I think, yeah,
I think we just
it's
lost
okay.
Alex and he's back in. Hopefully he's
and
still back
unfortunately,
in.
guys, I actually have somewhere I gotta be. So in the next like 5-10 minutes, I'm gonna have to sign off.
You
I
know
mean,
what? I
honestly,
think we've already been
are we
going for
good?
quite a fair amount of time, so I don't know if we've touched on a lot of points, on a lot of themes. We brought up more about comparisons back to the books and what we would have liked to see from the books instead, how the show goes. I think we can kind of keep it tight. Right now,
If
we
we
still
just
got
say,
7 more episodes to do, so we don't want to branch out beyond this episode too much. I would encourage everybody to go read the first 7 or 8 chapters of The Eye of the World, to when the flight through the night with Tam on the litter, when that happens, and just visualize the story in your mind and tell me that that wouldn't have been a million times fucking better than this first episode. That's all I got to say.
I think I will cede any time on my behalf over to Sneed and say, hey, we brought you on because you sort of started whole chain of events that led us to be here. You've had some pretty deep insight into this before in terms of your written reviews and some of the comments you brought up in the last couple episodes we've had you on for. So, what insights do you have to add?
I think I kind of have touched on everything that would be appropriate for this episode. I do think basically one thing I have noticed is basically they nixed the Luz Theron prologue, and which basically means we don't have any idea who this Dark One is, who the dragon is, why anybody even cares. Uh, they nixed the Paden Fane. At some point, Paden Fane tells them like someone's raised the standard of the dragon, and someone specifically says, "Oh, it can't be the dragon. That means the Dark One is loose in Geldian." And Bran Alvear says the Dark One's not the dragon. Those aren't the same thing. And they say, well, he's just as bad. So in the books, you've already established the dragon is something that to be afraid of.
Yeah.
We've seen that Lews Therin killed his whole family, killed all his servants, killed everyone, is known as the Kinslayer. They talk about how the dragon is going to break the world. And
They talk about the Dark Rider, and they also bring up maybe the Dark Rider is the dragon or the Forsaken. So that also gets introduced as an early concept too. But sorry, go ahead.
And so they basically have lost in this episode. They give you nothing about that. So you really have the closest you get to the Dark One is her saying like they tried to chain darkness itself. They don't have like this sense of basically what he is, who he is, what does he want, like why do they oppose him, and that's basically I can't imagine watching this show as a non-book reader and having any fucking clue what's going on at all. I think that the idea that these non-book readers would they would love this, they would understand all this, I think that's complete bullshit. I think they would be so lost that they would basically it'd be incomprehensible to them.
Do you think that the format of release where they dropped the first 3 episodes, I mean, we haven't gone through the next 2 episodes in our rewatch, but you think there's any chance that that would have changed your answer there? I mean, watching 3 episodes together, could that solve that problem, or do you think it's still that bad?
The problem I would say is that like the second episode kind of helps follow along with this storyline. It kind of fills in some of the gaps, but then the third episode they kind of tone switch again, and it's just very they never actually really throughout the whole series they never really ever like sit down and explain who like this is what the story is, basically this is what we're doing, whereas by the end of the Eye of the World you do understand the basics of what's going on.
And this isn't. We'll save this for our next episode review when the dreams start. But Sneed pointed this out in his episode reviews on the Reddit. Was Balsamon is just a scary figure who screams with flames in his mouth, whereas he does a lot of the world building for the dark side in the books because he is not a cartoon villain. He's batshit crazy. He's got flames for eyes, but he's a sophisticated wine drinking villain giving his side of the story. And they cut that out completely until the very end, where
and they cut out Tom too. I mean, Tom was the other real big sort of heavy lifter for narrative development. And I think by not having Tom in episode 1, I think that was a huge miss in terms of world building.
And Trip made this point too, whereas if you age them or not age them down, they start naive. They start as farm bumpkins going out to learn about the world and their first journey out of town. And you as the reader, you're going along for that ride. And it's a wonderful way to basically get you to empathize with the main characters and learn as they're learning. So yeah, you're also not going to get that in this show. So, and like Alex, I think the most apropos thing you said about this show in our first ep was it fails on every level, on technical, on music, on cinematic, on theme, on it gets in its own way in terms of the messages it wants to push, and on every level, every conscious decision they made it worse, and it's unbelievable just on that basis. I didn't know that anything could suck so bad in the world as this show. And with that, let's wrap it up and I guess move on to episode 2 next week.
Yeah, that's about as savage of a review as I think even the White Cloaks can muster.
Sneed, thanks so much for coming on. We're going to have you on
thanks
at a
for
later
having me on.
one, and we'll have you on. We want to give other people the opportunity to join us in our drunken ramblings, but we'll definitely have you on later, and we'll give you a choice of a very, very shitty part of the show that you can join us again for. So thanks for being here, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, guys. And it was fun last time, and it was really fun this time.
Even though everybody but Pips, we did this sober because we're reforming our lives.
Let's not go that far.
Forming implies there's something wrong with the way you were doing things before, and my
kind of
alcoholism is cheeky and fun.
And I was passing out halfway through these fucking things, so we had to stop and do it again. That's
Man,
the issue.
we are definitely going to play a bloopers reel from that
Oh,
because
man.
I think that's the first time I've ever heard someone so drunk that they were actually hiccuping. It was great.
Yeah, it was. Oh, man.
All right, well, I gotta go, guys. Peace out.
All right.
Yep.
All right.
See you, Sneed. And we'll wrap it up here, guys. Alex, I guess you can probably cut the stream, but if we want to continue chatting, we can. But I don't know.
I feel like we